table.
Right, OK. What do you think, Phil? Obviously it's concerning to the Federation for the members who want to sell properties, for others who might want to buy and can't get the finance at the moment.
Well, it's just a carry on from the global recession, and as such I think that at some stage money will become available again, but it's I'm very supportive of farmers paying down debt under the current circumstance. I think that a lot of the money was spent initially, well, over the last few years, has been spent on productive assets, new cowsheds and things like that, and changing farms, and as such those farms are probably working quite well and probably producing income. So it may not be quite as bad as people think, but if you want to sell your farm at the moment, if you've got no buyer, well. I think the banks should be very aware that they should be supportive and help people get through this particular problem, because it's a problem that affects all New Zealanders. It's not just the farming industry. Right.
Well, that flows on very nicely into our next subject. It's a column in the Herald by John Rowan. He's a well-known columnist there. He posed the question, why do we still help exporters? This was in regard to the government assistance package with PSA. What's your attitude here, Doug?
Yeah, well, I think export income is pretty crucial for New Zealand. I think everyone understands that. There is always, again, some sort of balance to be struck that the benefits do outweigh the cost. We don't want to go holus bolus throwing money just for exporting's sake, because the costs can outweigh the benefits. Having said that, though, I think more generally, if we can just set up the macroeconomic framework that allows business, including exporters, to thrive, then that's really the aim of the game. Things like macroeconomic policy in terms of monetary policy, make sure we're getting that right. We've certainly had a good look at that over the years. And government spending, those types of things. Labour laws, the Commerce Act and those sorts of things that can let business thrive.
Right. Now, Phil, I'm sure you, like that I do, you often hear the comment from people in Auckland and other cities around New Zealand. Farmers, they've had some crisis or some climatic event, they go rushing to the government for help.
I think, well, the biosecurity one's a bit sort of government is responsible for biosecurity. But New Zealand's got this insatiable appetite for overseas exchange, and because we run an imbalance, we do actually need to be trying to earn this overseas exchange. But in that article by John, I noticed it was stimulated by talking to his carpet cleaner. And the carpet cleaner, I would imagine, I would say one of the biggest subsidies in the country at the moment is probably the accommodation supplement. And that feeds through and promotes building and housing in general. And I would say that a lot of carpet cleaners' work would actually come from the accommodation supplement. So it's not so...
support by another name.
Let's put it this way. It's not just the exporters, it's the whole country in a lot of cases. There's a lot of subsidies still out there, and there's very little of it is actually in agriculture. And when we did get subsidies many years ago, 25 years ago when they finished, it was mainly done to compensate for the high tariffs and import licences that were given to people, because it was made... We were selling in one market and having to buy in another market. We weren't allowed to buy in the market we were selling in. So in effect, it's really quite a, nothing is that simple, and we're all New Zealanders. We've all got to pull together and work for the country,
Right. I guess working for the country is what the new group, which is all about productivity, that's been set up. It's going to be headed by MAF Director General Murray Sherwin. What good do you think it's going to do, Doug? We've had these sort of groups and subcommittees and special projects before, haven't we?
Yeah, I think this is actually a good development. There hasn't been enough focus on productivity over the years, in my view. It's now going to focus on it, and I guess productivity is often thrown around as, this is a great thing, we just need it. But to put it sort of what it means is we can have growth without higher costs, we can have growth without higher interest rates. That's why we're looking for productivity growth. So having a dedicated task force for it, or a government agency for it, I think very much like the Australian Productivity Commission, I think that's a good thing, and that hopefully they can come up with some answers on how we can get it in New Zealand, productivity growth, that is.
Good one. Phil, the Federation will be right behind this development?
Well, I think that anything that for productivity, I'm a little bit... I'm not sure whether the chair has much of a position in there, but I'm quite surprised that sort of a bureaucrat has been given the job. I would have thought possibly somebody from a successful person from business would probably have done the job for next,
But it's good, I guess, to see that agricultural background coming through at that level, because productivity in agriculture is where the country's productivity is going to rise generally, isn't it?
Okay, I wouldn't on that, but it's still there is probably a lot of agricultural entrepreneurs out there who would possibly do quite a good job. But it all depends. If the chair doesn't have a huge influence, he's just there to moderate, well, that's fine.
Well, just moving on very quickly, Deborah Coddington in the Herald on Sunday, she was attacking Jan Cameron's campaign about factory farming, saying it's a witch hunt and asking where it will lead. What do you think, Doug?
I think New Zealand needs to stick to its competitive advantage, stick to pastoral farming. We grow grass well. We need to stick with that advantage. We don't need to go down the route. Sure, if it's profitable, maybe it can stack up in parts, but I think we've got to stick to our knitting really and benefit from it. And
we need to be clean and green all the way.
Well, that's right. You've got to be careful about your overall brand. Certainly, rather than just the one-off farm that may or may not take place, you've got to think about the whole shebang, really.
Right, thanks. After the break, it's time to box the ears or dish up praise in You Beauty or a bollocking. See which way the awards fall. Welcome back to Straight Talk. Now it's on to You Beauty, praise, or a bollocking, the opposite. Doug, what do you have for us this week?
Well, on the You Beauty side, I think the medium-term outlook still looks pretty positive for New Zealand agriculture. I think the prices overseas are picking up. It's on the emerging world demand. Places like China, India, Russia, Brazil. There's positive signs for protein demand clearly there, and these prices are just starting to pick up, which is promising. So that would be certainly a beauty. It's been long promised, and hopefully
might be here. And what's your attitude towards the potential free trade agreements that could really reap many more rewards for New Zealand exporters from those markets?
Yeah, well, I think it's another step in the right direction, the free trade agreement that we might undergo with Russia. Certainly a big market for beef and dairy. So positive signs there as well.
Yeah, are you feeling as positive, Phil?
Yeah, I think it's looking pretty reasonable out there. I mean, we were looking pretty reasonable a year or so ago, and then the whole thing turned to custard. But I mean, I have a feeling that we've probably got in the medium outlook is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, good one. But I believe you also have a bollocking,
Doug.
Well,
we've been bollocked by the weather, really, haven't we? September storms were awful. The 10% drop in lamb numbers are a case in point. The grass didn't grow, so dairy was down. We can't control it, but it doesn't matter whether you can control it or not. It's still been pretty harsh.
Yeah, and I know there's some Northland farmers even now who are concerned about the possibility of things shaping up for another rather dry summer. Farmers just have to live with it.
Well, that's right. I mean, we're only trying to recover from last summer, and now we've got this La Nina event that's extreme by many measures, and shaping up as quite a key risk going into summer and autumn.
Yeah, we had 10 mils of very welcome rain last night, and I think it all soaked in. So perhaps the La Nina might be a little bit better for Northland and parts of the east. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. What can farmers do, or the Federation do on farmers' behalf? You have these very good support mechanisms when a climatic event like the snows down south strikes, but what can you do when you've got an emerging situation developing?
Well, it's in effect there's very little other than counselling people through the rural trusts, etc. But taxation is a problem, and if you've had a good year or something like that, and then you've got a very bad year, well, the Inland Revenue are quite good at allowing people to sort of equalise that. So that is what a lot of people out there in the urban community think that when there's a drought situation pegged is that people get money. Well, they don't get money.
So it's preparedness really is the key. Now, I believe that you might have a beauty for us this week, Phil.
Yeah, I do. It's Nick Smith, and after talking to us at the Feds Council last week very positively, and then I heard him on the radio the next day telling some of the environmentalists to come back to planet Earth. And I thought that was quite good. And then he went on further to say that as far as the rest of the world is concerned, not one nation has got agricultural emissions in any sort of scheme what they have as far as as charging people is concerned. So I think that good on your neck and keep it up.
Yeah, right. What about this focus on environmental matters, Doug? How much do you see that playing a part in the future prospects for agriculture?
I think it's a major issue, not only for New Zealand but globally. How we position ourselves brand-wise, how we manage it on farm, who pays for it, how do we actually get the system to try to change behaviours globally. There's a host of issues in there. Certainly going to be one to watch for many decades, it seems.
Right. Does there need to be more consensus within New Zealand amongst the players? That there seems to be, a great division between environmental groups and other groups like Federated Farmers. The government standing in the middle of them. Nothing much gets done.
Well, I think it's a political process, right? It's democracy. We need to try to understand everyone's views, get the science to back up what's really going on, and make the right decisions based on that.
Good. Now, Phil, I believe you also have a bollocking, and that might be pretty much along the environmental lines as well.
Might be, yeah. And possibly Gary Taylor then and his EDS. For what my colleague calls their imposium on the Mackenzie country. They invited Donald Albury along, our Vice President. No, let's get this right. They did not invite Donald Albury along, but they promoted the fact that he would be there. And I think that was rather presumptuous of them. So,
so you're not expecting much is going to come out of the meeting in Twizel this weekend?
No, well, I don't know. Perhaps they should be concentrating on more urban pollution in Auckland rather than necessarily the Mackenzie. We all love the Mackenzie, but there's areas there that, Wildland Pines, for example, being that area that could be used very well for irrigation and produce some very desired overseas exchange.
Right. Well, I'm sure these issues will be thrashed out at the conference. I Have a You Beauty, a tribute to the man who's made an enormous difference to our understanding of the land. Professor Tom Walker, who was 94, he passed away last week, a soil scientist who put the must-know fascinating facts back into an out-of-favour yet significant subject. That's all we have time for this week. Thanks to my guests, Federated Farmers Finance and Economics spokesperson Phil York and BNZ Senior Economist Doug Steele. And thanks to you for watching. Please email your comments to country99tv.co.nz. Check out my blog there, and we'll see you next time.